Hello everyone. Today we have Teresa Torres with us uh, for a chat about product management. Teresa is a internationally renowned uh, product thought leader, thinker, and a coach. She has written a really great book about specifically about product discovery called Continuous Discovery Habits. It's a great book and everyone should check it out. So welcome, Teresa. And my first question to you is, why is um, product discovery so important for product management?
Yeah, product discovery is really all the work we're doing to decide what to build. So if we're really customer-centric or even business-centric, we want to focus on creating value for our customer and creating value for our business. We have to be really intentional and thoughtful about how we're making those decisions so that we don't waste our time building the wrong things.
And how would you describe product or continuous discovery? What do you see product continuous discovery as?
Yeah, so I'll start on the discovery side. So we're starting to recognize that in order to make good decisions about what to build, we need to include our customer as part of that process. We got to get feedback along the way. We got to test and iterate. And so good discovery starts with including the customer in the process. And then many of us were introduced to discovery tactics from a project mindset, and we're seeing the industry shift towards a more continuous mindset, where we're recognizing digital products are never done. We can always iterate and improve them. So we're looking at how do we continuously engage with our customers. And so what that looks like is I teach teams to engage with customers on a weekly basis, where they're both interviewing to discover unmet needs, and they're also testing assumptions to quickly evaluate potential solutions.
Okay, so that's interesting. So nowadays, because of COVID and all the, in general, a lot of companies are trying to move to 100% remote working situations. So teams are not really co-located, like for example, in Prodeasy, our team is distributed all over the world. So in that case, how should product teams come together for this sort of a thing and interview customers, and how does this work in a remote situation, you think?
Yeah, what's great is we have really great tools today to help support remote or even hybrid work. So it used to be that we had a strong belief that teams had to be co-located because, when you're working throughout your day, there's going to be a million questions that come up. It's easier to just turn to your colleague and have a conversation. Or if you're doing an interview, you can all be in the same room. What we're seeing is that we can simulate a lot of that with the tools that we have. So I know teams that literally hang out on a Zoom call all day, even while they're quietly working, so that when they do have a question come up, they can turn to a colleague. I don't even think that's required. When we have tools like Slack and MS Teams, we don't even need to be on live video all the time. We have really good collaboration tools. The other tools that I'll highlight that I think are a game changer are things like digital whiteboards. So whether that's Miro or Mural or Jamboard, or even teams are using Figma for similar purposes, it allows us to easily collaborate on documents. Visually is, I think, a big piece. I actually think digitally working out of a Miro is better than standing in front of a physical whiteboard, because we can all create at the same time, right? Whereas when you're in a physical space in front of a whiteboard, usually one person has the marker. Whereas now we can all get in and collaborate. We have an infinite space. So I think that and the other advantage of remote or hybrid is that when we interview people in person, we're really limited to the customers that are in our geographic region. Whereas with remote interviewing, we actually get a lot more variation and diversity in our interview pools. We can assumption test with a lot more different types of customers. So I think there's huge benefits to being remote. And I think we do have the tools to support it. I think it's less about co-location and more about overlapping work hours so that you do have real-time face-to-face, virtual face-to-face conversation and discussion.
So, okay, so how often do you think, say a remote team or even a co-located team, how often should they talk to the customers? Is it every week, every day, once a month, or what you're thinking?
Yeah, so I really recommend that most teams try to get to every week. The reason for that is we're making decisions every day. The longer we go between talking to customers, the more decisions we're making where we're not getting feedback. Once a week is a good benchmark to aspire to. Some teams engage with customers more frequently than that, right? If you're working on a consumer product that's very broadly appealing, or you work at a retailer like Target or Walmart here in the US, Starbucks, right? There's a lot of these companies where, or even our big internet companies like Netflix or Facebook or Google, if your customer is easy to reach, you can talk to your customers more than once a week. If we swing the pendulum the other way and your customers are really hard to reach, weekly might be a challenge, but you can take a continuous improvement mindset to this. If you're rarely talking to a customer, find your first customer to talk to. If you're talking to them quarterly, try to get to monthly. If you're talking to them monthly, try to get to every other week. So this is not a hard and fast rule. It's about increasing the frequency in which you engage with customers and looking at how you can adopt a continuous cadence. So not a whole bunch of customers in a week or two, and then no customers for a long time, but more, how do you spread it out more continuously?
And does it also kind of depends on whether you are in the B2B domain or B2C domain or direct to the domain?
I really have worked with many B2B organizations that are talking to their customers weekly. So it really, it's less about B2B versus B2C. B2C is certainly easier in some contexts, but B2B, you tend to have stronger relationships with your customers, and that can make it easier. So it's not that one is easier than the other. They're just different environments that we have to adapt for.
Okay. So for example, when we started initially, right, it was very difficult to recruit customers. I mean, it was very difficult to gain customers in the first place, but also then once you have a customer, it was difficult to recruit them to talk to you on a regular cadence. So how are successful or high performing product teams doing that? How are they managing to talk to or get customers to talk to them?
Yeah, one of the keys that I talk about in my book is to automate the recruiting process. So if you're hustling to find a customer every week, it's not going to be a sustainable habit. There's a few different ways you can automate the recruiting process. The most common ones is to use your product or service to help you recruit. So you can recruit people while they're visiting, while you already have their attention, while they're visiting your site or using your service. This isn't going to be just flip the switch and it's going to magically work. You have to treat it like a product funnel. You have to experiment with where you show the message, what you ask for, how much time, what you offer as a reward, who you show it to. So there's a lot of variables to tweak and optimize, but I will say the vast majority of teams that I work with are automating the recruiting process from within their product. Now, that works if you're recruiting consumers or if you're recruiting B2B end users. If you're trying to recruit decision makers or buyers, that's where you want to use your internal teams that are outward facing to help you recruit. So that's your sales teams, your account management teams, your customer success folks. Odds are you have people in your company that are talking to customers all day, every day. You can work with them to have them help you book interviews. And you can just give them triggers. You can say, this week, if you're talking to a customer who's experiencing this need, go ahead and book an interview on my calendar. And so both those strategies require a little bit of infrastructure work to get them up and running and working. But the payoff is huge. It makes it very easy for you to find someone to talk to week in and week out.
Would you recommend trying to sell in these calls, or just stop and just listen and just get the feedback on the product?
Yeah, so it's really important that they not be sales calls. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build trust so we can learn about our customer. And I don't even recommend talking about your product at all. The goal is not to get feedback on your product. It's to learn about your customer, what their needs are, what their pain points are. When you're trying to learn about your solutions, that's where you really want to be focused on assumption testing, which is a little bit different from interviewing.
Okay. Are there any misconceptions about continuous discovery that teams should watch out against?
Yeah, there's a lot. A big one we just touched on, which is a lot of people think about interviewing as a way to explore solutions. I really recommend teams think about interviewing as a generative activity. It's really to learn about your customer, their context, what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, how they're doing that today. So it really should be centered on your customer. And then we can use assumption tests to rapidly figure out, is this solution going to work or not? The reason why most teams don't assumption test is it's really hard to see our own assumptions. So in the book, I give a lot of strategies for how to surface assumptions. And then once you've done that, there's a variety of methods for how to quickly test them. So there's sort of two new skills we have to learn to be able to quickly evaluate solutions. And that's what we have to learn how to see our assumptions, and then we have to learn how to rapidly test them. A lot of teams are really grounded in a project world where we're doing validation research. We're doing all the design up front, and then we're validating, did we get it right with a usability test? Or we're doing all the delivery up front, and then we're validating with the A/B test, did we build the right thing? We do want to do validation research. That's a good gut check, but we want to do more discovery research earlier on. So we're learning before we do the work, if this is the right thing to build.
Okay. Now, let's say there's a new entrepreneur who's completely new to product management or even the business of startup, and they have a brilliant idea that they think is a brilliant idea. And tomorrow they want to, take their first step towards creating a great product that everyone loves. So what would be your guidance? What should the first thing they should do, in your opinion?
Yeah, so for entrepreneurs in general, they usually start by having a seed of an idea. And I'm going to argue that's the wrong place to start. Ideas are cheap. Your idea is going to evolve. By the time you build something that works, it's going to look nothing like where you started. So in an ideal world, what that founder would do is start with, okay, I had this idea. I'm really motivated by it. How do I take a step back and say, why do I think this idea is valuable? Who is it going to serve? And what's the value proposition it's going to deliver for them? So instead of saying, hey, I have this great app that I want to build, I want to start with, here's the audience I want to serve, and here's the value I want to create for them. What that does is it gives you a wider lens. It gives you more latitude to explore how you can create that value, how you can serve that customer, so that you don't blindly pursue an idea that probably is not going to work. Very few of our first ideas work, right? To get something to work, we have to iterate on it. We have to evolve it. We have to change it based on what we're learning from the market. So I really recommend that entrepreneurs, usually inspiration comes from an idea. We're going to start with a solution. That's human nature. But how do you go from there to widening the lens to why do we think, who is this idea designed to serve? Why do we think that's valuable? What's the benefit? And then using that to explore what are the needs, pain points, and desires that you can address? And then how do you fine tune the solution to match to that opportunity space?
Okay, but then in enterprises, usually these projects, or let's call them projects, that's the right word, they are just given to the product team saying, oh, we need to build XYZ, we need to build a solution for, say, investment banking or whatever. So then how should those teams push back on that and say, no, wait, let's first understand who our customer is and so on? Do you have how to deal with the management, especially in that case?
Yeah, so if I'm being asked to deliver a specific feature or a specific output, what I'm going to start with, I'm not going to start by pushing back, because odds are that's not going to be successful. I got to recognize that my business is asking me to deliver an output. So I want to start with, how do I create the best version of this output? So I'm going to start with the second half of the habits. I'm going to start by story mapping the idea. I'm going to start by identifying the underlying assumptions. I'm going to start testing assumptions. And here's the thing. Even before I start testing assumptions, odds are I'm going to run into problems just story mapping. Because most of the time when we get ideas from other people, they're half-baked, vague ideas. And as we try to make them specific, as we try to make them concrete, we run into problems. As soon as we run into a problem, that opens the door to working with our stakeholders to expand our thinking, right? So we can share our story map and say, hey, I'm trying to work through how this output might work. Here's some challenges I'm running into. Here's some assumptions that might be faulty. Help me work through these. What else can we consider, right? And that opens the door to alternative solutions or alternative versions of that solution. It can also open the door to, what customer problem are we solving? Who is this a problem for? But you want to start with where that stakeholder is, which is they really want this output. So you got to start by trying to make that output work. And then as you expose problems, try to widen the scope.
Great. I think that's a fantastic advice that any team would do well to follow. Thanks a lot for your time today, Teresa. We are almost out of our time. do you have any last words for a budding product manager / entrepreneur? That some words of advice.
Yeah, so first, thank you for having me. It's been really great to get to share a little bit about continuous discovery. For listeners who want to learn more, the book is called Continuous Discovery Habits. It's available at bookstores around the world. If you read the book and you want help putting it into practice, we also have a membership program where you can connect with like-minded peers and get help putting the habits into practice. You can learn about that at producttalk.org. Look for the heading, Find Your People.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Really appreciate this chat, and hopefully we'll have more such chats in the future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm going to stop recording now.